Ghost Story for Christmas by me, Lucy Blue Wolf. Taken from my book, And Yet Another Kiss, Tales of Ghosts and Other Strange Things, written under my pen name of Lucy Ellis-Clay. Angelina. If music be the food of love, sing on till I am filled with joy. For then, my listening soul, you move to pleasures that can never cloy. From Henry Heveningham's only known poem. That was beautiful, Eleanor said. Thank you. The young woman sitting at the piano turned to smile at her. Do you play too? Eleanor shook her head. Oh no, I wish I did. I love to hear piano music. It's my favourite instrument. I always wanted to learn to play it, but just never seemed to get a chance. Or probably just didn't manage to make the time. She gave a wry smile. Life does have a habit of getting in the way sometimes, the other woman said. She was little more than a girl, really, Eleanor thought. Any requests? She asked, turning back to the keyboard. I'll be happy with anything you feel like playing, Eleanor told her, as she sat back in her seat and sipped her coffee. It was nice to find a café with both good coffee and a piano, complete with pianist. An attractive one too, she thought. She was in Whitby for a few days' holiday. Work had been hectic lately, and she'd felt a need for some time to recuperate. So she'd arranged with Mrs. Arden, her next-door neighbour, to feed Tom the cat for a few days, and decided a short break by the sea would do her good. Now she was here, although it was somewhat out of season in late October. The weather wasn't being too kind, and to escape the rain she'd wandered into this small café today. She found a corner seat, which wasn't too difficult, the place being almost empty, and settled with her coffee. And then the dark-haired young woman had come in, sat at the piano, and begun playing. You're very good, if you don't mind me saying so, she commented, as the current piece ended. The Entertainer, wasn't it? Yes, that's right. Are you a fan of Scott Joplin? Or do you recall it from the film? You know, it was in The Sting. A bit of both, if I'm honest, Eleanor said with a laugh. She eyed the other woman carefully. She looked to be some few years younger than herself, early 20s at a guess. Her dark hair was cut short, and her pale complexion made her blue eyes all the more striking. She was really rather beautiful, in an elfin sort of way, Eleanor thought. Would you like to take a break, she asked. Join me for a coffee, maybe? The younger woman hesitated briefly, then rose, and walked across to join her. Thank you, she said as she sat down. That would be lovely. As she did so, Eleanor noticed she was even more petite than she'd looked while seated at the piano. Certainly she was several inches shorter than her own 5'7", and so lightly built that she seemed almost to float across the floor rather than walk. Coffee then, is it? She asked. Yes, please. A latte would be nice. The girl glanced at the magazine Eleanor had been reading. Fate and Fortune, she read on the title page. She looked up. You're interested in spirits and such, then? Yes, Eleanor agreed. She stood, pulling her purse from her shoulder bag. My mum was into spiritualism, and I am too. I go to my local spiritualist church sometimes. I hope that's not a problem. Oh no, the girl said, shaking her head. Her hair swayed attractively with the movement. I have an interest in that sort of thing myself. That's good then. I'll have another coffee myself too, Eleanor said. And what's your name? She asked, turning back as she began to head for the counter. Mine's Eleanor, by the way. The girl smiled, looking a little shy, Eleanor thought. She liked that. I'm pleased to meet you, Eleanor, she said. I'm Angelina. So, Eleanor said once she returned with the coffees, tell me about yourself. She sipped at her latte, then decided it was too hot and needed time to cool a little. She set the cup back down on the little round table. What do you want to know? The girl was staring out of the window, watching the traffic on the main road a little way off. She turned back to their table with a slightly vacant look on her face, picked up her cup and sipped her coffee, which was apparently not too hot for her. She looked up into Eleanor's face. Eleanor wondered what she was making of her, taller and broader than herself certainly, with dark hair and eyes, and skin a few shades darker, inherited from forebears from far warmer climes than England. Anything you like, really. You play so well. Are you a professional musician? Do you live around here? Whatever, she laughed, watching the girl's mouth, wondering what her lips would feel like beneath her own. Angelina shrugged. I was at music college, but I'm taking a break at the moment. So I suppose sort of professional, but not quite. And I'm just visiting, although I used to live not far from here. I'm here for a few days' holiday myself, Eleanor said, sipping coffee that was now cooling. She hesitated, but caution rarely won anything worthwhile. Well, we're both here, maybe we could spend a little time together. Unless you've other commitments, she added. Angelina looked at her with those piercing blue eyes. She knows exactly what I mean, Eleanor thought. I'd like that. I'm here by myself, and it's been a bit lonely. It's nice to meet someone I can talk to. Great, Eleanor said. I don't really know Scarborough well, but maybe you know some things we can do. I've been thinking of going over there. We could just sort of work something out together. Scarborough, Whitby, all around here. Well, anywhere will be fine. The girl smiled again as she gazed at her with those piercingly blue eyes. I'm sure we can work something out together, she said meaningfully. They spent the next few days and nights working things out together. They walked a lot during the days. That was partly because so many of the usual attractions were shut at this time of year. But it was also because they just enjoyed being alone, together, savouring each other's company. They walked along the seashore, investigating the bits of flotsam swept in by the tide, sometimes daring to paddle briefly in the freezing waters of the East Coast Sea, and clambered up the many steep steps to the ruined remains of the old abbey. Angelina asked Eleanor if she was aware of the ruins' inspiration of Bram Stoker to write his tale of Dracula. Or they sat on the harbour wall, watching the fishing boats as the gulls wheeled and screamed overhead. In the afternoons they called in at the little café where they'd met, and Angelina played the piano, while Eleanor sat sipping her coffee as she listened. And afterwards they ate, before going back to Eleanor's hotel. There they spent their evenings working out other enjoyable things together. On that first night, Angelina said she wasn't booked in anywhere. She'd only arrived that day, and her only luggage appeared to be the big shoulder bag she carried everywhere. So there was no need to go to fetch her things from anywhere else. That was fine by Eleanor, as it gave more time for them to spend doing more interesting things. Jesus, Angelina, she swore. She slid into bed after her shower. You're freezing! Sorry, I suppose I am. I was feeling cold while we walked along the beach tonight. Maybe if we'll cuddle, I'll warm up. The girl crept into the warmth of Eleanor's arms as she opened them to her. She felt cold, but her cool skin had a gentle scent that reminded Eleanor of summer flowers. She welcomed the soft touch of her bare flesh. Gradually her body warmed, or else its coolness was forgotten, as they twined and moved closer and more rhythmically together. Eleanor discovered that the taste of the younger woman's lips was sweet and her breath fragrant. Her slim body was lithe and limber, moving responsively in tune with the older woman's touch. And slowly they discovered one another's bodies, exploring, finding the parts that were most tender and that brought the greatest sighs and moans of pleasure, each from the other, until, eventually, they fell apart from one another again, gasping, and bathed in rivulets of sweat from their slaked passion. On their third evening, they visited the spiritualist church in town. They sat side by side on the red plush chairs that were lined up in rows. What do I do with this? Angelina asked, holding out the glass of water she'd been given. A plumpish woman had been handing these out as she greeted them at the door. Oh, put it under your seat, Eleanor said. It's nothing magic, just a drink if you want. They do it at a lot of the churches. It's pretty quiet in here tonight, she went on, looking round. There were only 10 or 12 others there, in addition to themselves. all well spread out among the rows of red plush chairs. A few more did wander in as the service was beginning, sitting towards the back of the hall. A man and woman on a small stage at the front of the hall led the simple service. They gave a brief welcome to everyone, then introduced the man who was to act as the spirit medium for the evening. There was a prayer, followed by a couple of songs or hymns, accompanied by an electronic keyboard that sounded as if it needed a little TLC. Finally, the medium stepped forward. He introduced himself with a short talk about how he'd become a medium, and then began to give messages from the spirit world to the people in the hall. "I never expect too much at these things," Eleanor whispered to Angelina. "I always hope to maybe get a message, but even when you do, it's often not all that exciting." "Often not from the people you'd most like to come through to talk to you?" Angelina asked. "Yeah, it's a bit like that. I sometimes find myself thinking that a lot of the messages given to other people are so general that I could think that any of them were for me." Angelina grimaced. "Maybe you'll get something better tonight," she said. Eleanor grinned and elbowed her gently in the ribs. "Later anyway, if not here," she whispered. "I have someone here for the young man at the back," the medium said loudly, pointing over their heads as he spoke. The startled women ceased their private conversation, and with others in the congregation, turned to look over their shoulders. A man in blue jeans and a dark hoodie was slouching in a chair in the back row. He looked youngish, but it was difficult to tell for sure. He had several days' beard growth, and his shoulder-length fair hair hung lank, as if it hadn't seen shampoo for some time. He sat up straighter as he realized the medium was talking to him. "There's a woman here for you," the medium said, still pointing. "She says you will know who she is." "How do I know?" the man said, looking blank. "She could be anybody." That seemed a fair answer to Eleanor. The medium was usually expected to give some description of the spirits who spoke through them, to prove their authenticity. Something about what they looked like in life, the cause of their passing to the spirit world, or some piece of information by which they could be recognized. But the medium continued. "She says you need no description. She says you know exactly who she is," he said. "I don't know," the other man said. "I've no idea who she is." His voice sounded a little shaky. "Why are you picking on me?" "I am only the medium," the man said calmly. "I can only give what she says. She says you know. She says something about guilt." He paused, looking puzzled for a moment, then went on. "She says you know what happened. She says you know who is guilty. She says there must be payment." "I don't know," the younger man said shrilly. "I don't know anything about it." He got abruptly to his feet. "I don't know who she is. I don't know anything about anything," he shouted. "Only came in to get out of the rain." He struggled out of the row of seats and into the aisle and began heading towards the door. "I don't know anything, and I'm not going to pay," he almost screamed. "It wasn't my fault. I didn't do anything." He stopped suddenly and staggered. He lifted his hands to clutch his head. "I don't know anything," he screamed. I'm not going to pay." Then he fell, first to his knees, still clutching at his head. He stopped screaming then and began moaning. And then he fell flat to the floor, writhed briefly, and was still. A dark stain began to spread out on the carpet beneath him, and the aroma of urine drifted in the air as his bladder emptied. "Well, you don't get that every day in a spiritualist meeting." Angelina smiled a little at Eleanor's exclamation. "No," she agreed. "It was a bit unusual, wasn't it?" "I wonder what it was all about," Eleanor mused. "I mean, what was the medium on about? What was it that man said before he keeled over? Do you think he did know something on the other side, someone on the other side, and there was something he'd done or not done to make them angry?" "I think they both knew what it was about," Angelina said quietly. "Now he's going to meet that person on the other side and make amends." "You mean after he had that stroke or whatever it was?" It's certainly gone to the other side anyway. Dead on the floor of the church. It was stunning, wasn't it? Anyway, you hungry? What? Oh, well, yes, I suppose so. Eleanor hesitated. She didn't want to seem callous, but they hadn't actually known the man who'd died. I suppose we still need to get on with our lives. We're still here if he isn't. It does kind of make you think, though, doesn't it, Angelina? I suppose it does. So do you want to eat or go back to our room? Eleanor paused. I don't really feel like eating, if you don't mind. I think I'd rather just go back, get a shower and go to bed. As if you're okay with that. I'm fine with that, Angelina said, slipping her hand into Eleanor's. They made love again that night, as they had on each of the nights they'd spent together. Perhaps it was the spectre of death that they'd witnessed that evening, but to Eleanor it seemed there was a more frantic element to their love-making than on any evening before. Angelina pressed her mouth so hungrily against hers, it seemed as if she were wanting to suck forth every last drop of joy. Her supple limbs writhed and twisted in ways that were amazing to sense, and her quick fingers seemed to find new ways to probe and please Eleanor's body, that brought sensations of pleasure that were so intense as to be at times almost painful. Eleanor finally exhausted her own desires and turned to pleasing her partner. She was accustomed now to the cool skin of this beautiful girl she had come to care for so deeply in such short time. Her mouth and fingers had learned the places and touches that pleased her. But tonight Angelina clung to her, gasping and sobbing as she thrust her slick body ferociously against her lover's. The forcefulness with which she sought her body's fullest satisfaction was almost frightening. She moaned and whimpered as she clung to Eleanor, and finally burst into a storm of tears as she shuddered again and again in what seemed an almost endless series of climaxes. At last, exhausted, they lay quiet, cradled in one another's arms. Eleanor lay for some time, watching the younger woman sleep. The pale face was waxen, no longer enlivened by the closed blue eyes. Cool breath sighed softly against her cheek, fragrant with the scent of summer flowers, which seemed ever present with Angelina. The soft curve of her own belly was pressed gently against that of Angelina, and she could feel the slim thighs still close against hers. Once or twice the girl stirred in her sleep, an occasional shudder coursing through her, perhaps recalling in dream her previous orgasm. Occasionally she moaned gently, and once, only once, her deep blue eyes opened to gaze briefly into Eleanor's, and she smiled and moved her head until she could softly nibble at her lover's ear, before falling back into peaceful sleep. In the morning, she was gone. Eleanor woke alone, while the sunlight of an early November morning streamed into the quiet bedroom. November the 1st. All Souls' Day in the church calendar, Eleanor thought. Her Catholic upbringing, despite her lapsed state in adulthood, had left her with the various seasons and celebrations of the church year indelibly imprinted on her mind. Today was the day on which the church remembered those who had passed from life to death. There was no sign of Angelina. Only the scent of summer flowers still lingered on the pillow where her head had rested the night before. There was no note, no sign of anything. Just that she was gone, leaving only the hint of her fragrance lingering behind. Eleanor showered and dressed, and went to the place she knew she would find her, if she was going to be found, to the little café on the corner where they'd first met. She looked first in the corner where the piano stood, but it was empty and silent. "Have you seen Angelina this morning?" she asked at the counter. The bearded youth standing there was new. She hadn't seen him before. "Who?" he asked. "Angelina," she said again. "The girl who comes in to play the piano. I've been sitting here with her the past week." "Sorry, I don't know," the youth said. He turned towards the kitchen. "Rachel," he called, "do you know someone called What was her name again? He asked, turning to Eleanor. Angelina, Eleanor said, as a young woman came from the kitchen, wiping flour from her hands on a cloth. She'd served Eleanor several times during the week and smiled in recognition. Angelina? The woman asked. What about her? Has she been in this morning? Eleanor asked. Has she been in this morning? The woman repeated, frowning and looking at Eleanor strangely. Yes, Eleanor was beginning to feel frustrated. We've been meeting here all the past week while she played the piano. Has she been in this morning? The woman shook her head. She looked at Eleanor as if she was uncertain if she was serious or not. No, she said. She's not been in this morning. I need to find her, Eleanor said. Have you any idea where she might be? I know where she is, the woman said, after a momentary hesitation. She's in the churchyard, where all the other dead people are. I think you'd better come and sit down, she continued, looking at Eleanor's suddenly ashen face with concern. Mark, turning to her bearded companion, bring us 2 coffees. I knew Angelina, she said, once they were sitting at one of the tables and Mark had brought their coffees. She was a music student at the college, and she used to come in here most days to play the piano and have a cup of coffee. She was a lovely girl. She played beautifully. I remember she liked playing Scott Joplin. You know his music? What they called piano rags. The Entertainer and such. But what happened to her? Eleanor asked. She felt chilled, and she sipped at her coffee, cradling the cup in her hands for its warmth. She was killed. It was about 2 years ago now. One summer's day during the college holidays. She was crossing the road just over there. The woman, Rachel, pointed through the window to the main road some little way away, towards where Angelina had been looking that first day, Eleanor recalled. She was on the crossing there, she pointed again. All right and proper, crossing the road, and this car came along. Some guy had stolen it, and the police were chasing him. He came tearing around the corner there, and she didn't stand a chance. He just slammed straight into her and carried on. Never stopped. The police stopped to try to help her, but she died at the spot. They never did catch the man who did it. He ought to have suffered for what he did to that girl. Maybe he did, eventually, Eleanor said thoughtfully. Rachel didn't hear her. And she never did get to play the piano that day, nor to get her coffee, she said. That's a pity, don't you think? She looked sadly at Eleanor. We shut the piano up after that's a kind of sign of respect, and nobody's ever played it since. Eleanor nodded. But maybe she did get to do both of those things, eventually, she said. Maybe she did. She finished her coffee and thanked Rachel and Mark for their kindness. Then she walked over to the piano in the corner seat where she and Angelina, was it Angelina, had spent the past days. The piano lid was closed, and when she tried to lift it, she found it was locked. She could see it was covered with a fine film of dust. She ordered another coffee, paying for this one. Then she went back to sit in the corner where she'd first met Angelina. Where are you now then, my love? She mused to herself as she sat alone, sipping her drink. You came back, she murmured to herself. Why'd you come back now, to me? Because I believe in spirit and could see you? Or because I could love you? Her eyes were moist, and she reached down into her bag on the floor by her feet for a tissue. And you had justice at last, she whispered, as she dried her tears. You found him if no one else did. Maybe we found him. Did I help you just a little, my love? And you spoke to him through the medium, even as you sat by my side. And finally he paid for what he did. Tears were coursing down her face despite anything she could do with the tissue. But why did you leave me, Angelina? My beautiful love. I would never have left you if I could. Why'd you break my heart, my darling girl? Her face awash with tears, she bent blindly to find another tissue, her fingers clumsily fumbling to find her bag where she'd placed it by her feet. She lifted it to her lap, but the fastener didn't want to open. Looking down, she tried to work out what was wrong. Then, mistily through her tears, she saw. And as sunshine after rain, she smiled through her tears. She was holding Angelina's back, and as she opened it at last, she found inside only a bouquet of dried flowers, from which gently wafted the fragrance of summer.